Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for December 6, 2016. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to start off with basically complimenting and acknowledging the individuals that put up the decorations around the town hall this weekend. I think that this came out stellar. This is a very nice touch to the town, and it's very reflective of basically how the town feels about itself, with people willing to volunteer their time and energies to do something like that. So without mentioning names, I just want to say thank you. Okay, first appointment is scheduled is the appointment of town clerk as access officer with town administrator as assistant records officer. If you remember, we had appointed the town administrator as a records officer. The town clerk pointed out that it would be much more fluid for her to be the first person and him being the second person. So I would entertain a motion to take and withdraw the first appointment and appoint Janine as the records keeper.
Okay, so I'll make a motion, we rescind the first motion and appoint the town clerk as the primary contact with the town administrator as a secondary or backup.
Sure.
There's
We've
sec-
had a discussion of this, and clerk will be doing the record keeping, which is appropriate and contemplated in the statute, unless the selectmen choose
Yeah.
to do differently. And then I'll get a copy of all requests. My job will be to see to it that the departments comply and get the records and forward them to whoever requests.
We have a second?
Okay. I think also it's important because the new public records laws are going to affect January 1st, and like I said, it says right in the statute that town clerk should be the primary one unless we want to change it. I don't see a need for that.
And the town clerk's in favor of this, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. So that motion was basically to change this back to the fact that the town clerk is now the first party. Okay, there are no hearings scheduled. Open time for the public.
Position that person.
Mr. Bray? No? Okay. Open time came and went. I'm going to take something out of order. By understanding, the attorney is here for a waiver of right to purchase on lots A through E for Woodmar Lane. Would she like to approach the podium and identify herself?
I'm Amanda Zadonis-Kemp, attorney for Chet and Sue Kellogg in regards to the waiver of right of first refusal for lots A through E and Woodmar Lane.
It is my understanding that the conservation has no concerns with this, so it's just a simple motion to waive our rights.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it for conversation. So we're sure that there's no issues from planning or conservation or anybody.
They've all gone through their hearing processes and their meeting processes, and no one has come back as far as I know.
No issues on plantings.
I went to the Conservation Commission meeting and they voted not to recommend to the select board to purchase the property.
Voted not to
They
recommend?
voted to not purchase it,
So to recommend not to purchase?
yes.
Okay, just,
So for you to waive your right, yes.
I just said it the other way around, so I want to make sure we got it right. Recommend not to. 'Cause if we don't do it right, somebody's coming back.
I have a motion on the floor. Do a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Abstain. Neighbor.
One abstention. Please note that for the record, Jen.
Normally, I receive the paperwork when I'm here. How is it going to be handled?
Where is the paperwork?
Generally, you guys generate the waiver for signature.
Do you have the paperwork?
I don't,
Okay?
but I was told that there is a form to do that.
Yes,
I'll get that to you.
Okay.
The chair's signature, correct?
I believe so.
Doesn't take the full board signature, just the chair.
Normally, we have a majority, whoever's here signs it, so I'd have to double check. In the past, it's always been the board, whoever's present and votes signs.
My question is legally, if the board votes and authorizes the chair to sign it, do you need those other signatures?
I have
know
to-
I'm putting you on the spot.
I have to check. I'm not sure if I can accept that or not. It may require an additional document showing the vote to be recorded in addition to the waiver.
What's your pleasure?
I would prefer to have the waiver signed by those who are here.
Okay, then that means,
There'll be a delay, which is fine.
okay.
Okay. If you can just call my office, I'm happy to come and pick it up when it's ready. Thank you.
All right, let's jump back now to reports, unless, select board updates, liaisons, so on and so forth. Go ahead, Jackie.
Okay, so the zoning board is having a meeting on December 19th at 7 PM, and the CPC is reviewing new projects.
Nothing.
You can probably report on safety complex since you're the chair last night.
Last night's meeting of the Safety Complex Committee was basically a review of how we got to where we are. We had a discussion with Kayla Gabrinik, who's the engineer that we've been working with. Basically, we're trying to cut that $10 million figure down. Don't know where we're going to land. Part of the problem with this is when we did this original plan, it was based on what we felt we were going to need for the coming years. When we take things away, we end up maybe saving a little bit of money, but we need to design this so that it can be expanded as growth and it needs to address this more. So at this point in time, there's discussion about where our debt's being retired in town. The hope is that we will be able to retire some of the debt, like the schools and that, and then concurrently do something with this complex so that our taxes will not go up. It'll be basically, we retire the school debts, we put in the public safety complex, and it's still the same taxes that we'll be paying as an individual for a town. But that's the discussion. Town administrator's report?
Okay, thank you. Met with the financial team this afternoon. 3 members of the finance committee, plus the town accountant and town treasurer, myself, to launch the budget process for fiscal 2018. The budget sheets are ready to go to department heads. There are a couple things that we need to accompany those budget sheets. One would be any guidelines or recommendations from the Board of Selectmen for the coming year. Any priorities, for example, second shift for the ambulance or some other priority that we should incorporate into the budget process. We're going to establish a schedule, timelines, and so forth, so that we can be sure to get the budget completed on time. And we are going to prepare a revenue sheet. It seems to me that it's tough to do even guidelines without knowing what it looks like for revenue next year. Best estimate is going to be around $400,000 in new money, including new growth. So that's about what the town has to work with in terms of new money. Given that that's very limited and that there's a lot of demands, my assumption is that we would ask department heads for a budget that covers current services and any mandatory increases that they have. Otherwise, they could make requests, but those would be reviewed in the budget process by the Finance Committee and then ultimately by the Board of Selectmen. And any guidelines for increases in wage and in salaries for non-bargaining people and wages as well from the selectmen would be good to incorporate those recommendations with the budget sheets that go out to the department heads. Can we maybe set up a process for getting those decisions from the select board?
How soon are these necessary?
I think it could wait till the 20th if,
Bob, why don't we put that on for the 20th?
Okay.
Given the amount of other meeting stuff we have tonight, that's not going to work tonight. And we'll set the tone priorities as to where we want to go with things.
okay. I'm meeting with the department heads tomorrow, and I'll just bring them up to date on how we're going to do this.
Time you meeting with the department?
10 o'clock. All are invited. It won't be the marathon that we had last time, which lasted an hour and 45 minutes because we had Don Jacobs reviewing with them. But they're going to come back with comments on the Jacobs report. I've also asked them to tell me any likes and dislikes about working for the town, just to see what's out there.
So it may be a long meeting after all.
That's a loaded question right there.
You know, well, the issue is, are there any, small-scale issues, problems, gripes that we can address to help out here around? Visited the Norris School yesterday to meet the superintendent, the principal, and the business manager at their request. Took a tour of the school. Beautiful facility. They took the opportunity to point out that there is some erosion in the front, in the concrete areas, that they feel is hazardous. So in addition to the need for laptop computers in the range of 160 to 180, that they're going to be asking for capital money to make those improvements next year. We're updating the vehicle list for insurance purposes. Goal there is to make sure that all the vehicles that the town owns are on that list, and any vehicles that have been taken out of service are removed from that list of insured vehicles. So, we're preparing the common victual permits, as well as alcoholic beverage licenses, which will come into you on the 20th at your meeting. I met today with the chair of the Historic Commission, and they have a grant application that we'll bring to you on the 20th after I have a chance to look through it, which would provide for both local, state grant money to make improvements and restoration of veterans' graves in the cemetery down here. They said that they had already done some restoration of Revolutionary War grave sites. This next phase would be Civil War soldiers. So, attended the Western Mass Legislative Summit on December the 3rd. Had a chance later to talk with Representative Kokut, and had a call from his office that he wants some additional information on this governor's bill that he is trying to shepherd through, which would cover the problem that we encountered with the doors on the
barn.
the barn. The barn. I won't attempt to pronounce the name again in public. Zipta. The Zipta farm.
Yeah, spell that.
And so, yeah,
Oh my
spelling
gosh, I
is
know.
no vowels. So, because the work was done technically in violation of the standards for wages, prevailing wages. We have to have the governor submit a bill to the legislature to rectify it. So that's a process that's underway, and Representative Kochen is trying to work that through for the town.
And that's roughly $10,000 difference, right, if I remember right?
Yes, yes. I think the total now is $21,000. Upcoming meetings, department heads tomorrow, building subgroup on the 14th. We have already set the deadline of December 15th for warrant articles. I have a list. I only have a few, of the list, I only have a few actual articles. So I guess it's the town administrator's job to create the articles. And it's a good deadline because obviously I've got to have time to create the articles and then get them off to town council for a review to make sure that they're in correct form.
Can you check with the town clerk and the town moderator to find out what the drop dead date is on posting the warrant for a town meeting?
2 weeks.
That's confirmed by town clerk?
No, but
Please check.
98% certain.
I trust your background.
Okay. On posting, yes.
Because if it is 2 weeks, it allows us some lateral movement.
It does.
For the beginning of January to make a final decision.
I've had contact with the representative of the police union. The union has not yet voted on that agreement. Stressed the importance of getting that done in order to be able to go to the special town meeting and get the funding. So, and the Miltimore meeting we have tonight is an executive session.
If I may, when you spoke to COCOT, did you bring up the East Street Bridge?
No.
Just so everyone knows, the East Street Bridge grant that we applied for, we did not receive. Would you
Readiness
find
to-
time to speak to
Yeah.
State Senator Humison and COCOT? We had a strategy laid out if we didn't get the grant,
Mhm.
and to see if they can start moving it forward in that direction. It's all done at the Boston level, not at this level, but it would be nice to keep that moving.
This be an earmark?
That's the next thing.
Yeah.
An earmark, maybe out of DOT special revenue accounts or something of that nature. But,
We want to talk about, and maybe it was at the last meeting I missed, about us not getting the grant for the Cook Road property too?
I can't speak very directly, but she can about it.
Okay, so you're going to talk about that?
There is an alternate bill, just. so
Right,
you
there
know.
is.
I'm derailing someone else I was going to bring up. Okay.
And lastly, I didn't mention that you and I toured the fire, you gave me a tour of the fire station.
Yes, I brought him
Yesterday.
through the fire station, through the piles of recyclables, the gear, squeezing through.
tight.
He was impressed.
All the room that we didn't have?
Oh, did
Yes,
yes.
that didn't have. Then I showed him the accommodations that we have for staff and lack thereof. And there's a desperate need in that building to do something.
Absolutely.
Okay, I guess we'll go into departments then. Water Department's informed me that there's going to be a few articles they're going to be submitting. One for the water line on 4 now?
4,
I thought it was 3. They added another one?
I was told 4.
Okay.
Okay, well, they're all coming out of the
I don't have them
capital
yet,
budget. I don't have them either, I just know about the main one, which is the safe route for school and the water line on College Highway.
Well, when he was in last week, he gave us the list of them, didn't he? I thought it was only
He did,
3
I
of
don't
them.
remember
Yeah, I don't
the
either.
list. And now, without further ado, the Conservation Commission.
Right. Marla Hank, Gilbert Road Conservation Commission. I just have a brief list, it's a big font of what we're doing. Mainly what we're working on now are plans for what to do next year, because it's been brought to our attention that some people don't think we follow through. So we're going to be putting together plans of which properties to address and what to do on them. The last time I was here, we talked about the Conway School of Landscape Design. We won't be working with them because we don't have any money to do that. We don't have $7,000, so we'll try again next year. A project we are working on is blazing the property lines for the conservation land. Some people had brought it to our attention that they thought abutters were perhaps extending onto the town property. So we've started with the Whittemore property, had Holmberg and Howe confirm the lines. The properties have already been blazed and they have the pins, but you have to find them. Some they found like 6 inches underground, so you find them. And so what we're doing, in case you hear from the townspeople, what are those purple spots all over the trees? That is our color of town property conservation lands. They take a can of purple paint and go, psh, and except when they get a little carried away and go, psh, 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 psh. Anyway, but it's purple paint, that's us. The next property we're going to do is the Zipta Farm. That's a big property. Continuing with Zipta, the farm license has been discussed with the Water Commission because the Conservation Commission and Water Commission jointly manage that property, and probably within a few days, we can get Charlie a copy so he can review it prior to your meeting on the 20th, because you're the ones who actually sign off on it. Well, we sign it too, but.
So that, make a note, Jen, in the minutes that the board wishes this to be on the agenda for the 20th, the farm contract with the Fletcher family.
And it's SZCZYPTA Farm. As for the barn itself, because the new cost of the work will cost $21,000 and we only had $20,000 from community preservation, clearly we're not going to have any leftover money to do any other work vis-a-vis that stabilization. But, well, we won't. We're having discussions with the Historical Commission about the property and the barn itself, but that's ongoing. And I'd again like to thank Nicole Fletcher for having applied the paint to the exterior so the brand new wood at least would be protected. So we'll do that. And then, speaking of other volunteers, we are, because we have no money, looking for volunteers to help do our things. Brittany has been in touch with the assistant principal, Mark Folta, at the high school, and we'll be building a program. From the last time I mentioned it here, someone actually called and said their child was interested in doing that as a service project, so that's great to know. And we would be looking for adults as well, because I don't think we're going to be sending a bunch of teenagers into the woods with machetes and spray paint to go do things. You know, it might be a little more creative than we're looking for. So we're looking for adult volunteers as well. But speaking of adult volunteers, I would definitely like to thank Janet Brown, Preston Brown, and Jennifer Zielinski for donating their time to Weed Whack and pay to have refurbished the sign by the Manhan Meadows entranceway. So thank you, Janet and Preston and Jennifer. One of the things that Heather had told us before she left is that we need to have hold harmless forms filled out, and Janet and Preston and Jennifer did do that. So if someone wants to volunteer, they can get in touch with the Conservation Commission, and we can custom fill in the blanks for them for doing whatever they would like to. And then I'd like to thank Charlie for having mentioned that Janine could do some deed research for us before we actually go spend money on attorneys, and she's probably saved us at least $1,000, and she actually likes it. She does it in between her other duties, but watching her, it's like watching an archaeologist really into it look at this, and
digs
you
this.
go,
This is-
it's like you go over here and you go over there, and she's pulling out stuff, and you see handwritten deeds from the 18-somethings, and you realize it was a whole huge document in beautiful penmanship with no whiteout, no retypes, no crossout. It's perfect.
What was wrong with those
I
people?
I can't even imagine
Spell check?
how they did it, but anyway, so that's been going well, except it just points out also that it is not clear if we can go on the road or not, but it's still an interesting journey, if not on that road. So, okay, for the bridge project between East Hampton and Southampton that was initiated with the Pascomic Conservation Trust, we did vote to table it until further notice from our side, because some of it was still unknown, and we didn't feel that, as much as we thought the idea of the bridge was lovely and it would tie two really nice parcels together, we don't have the people power or the finances to deal with it right now. So we're going to try to get other properties in order and then revisit it later. So, but that also means then there's a $50,000 grant that I don't know, that was awarded to East Hampton, Southampton, and the Land Trust, that I don't know if we'll be able to get to that before it expires. We don't know, so that you know that. But then also talking about grants, we did not get the grant for the land grant for $400,000 for Cooking County Road, but we always knew that was a possibility, however disappointing, and so the Water Commission has applied for the drinking water grant.
Do we know when that grant's going to be awarded, a timeframe?
I don't.
Do we have anything in the original support of this process saying that it's got to be done by a certain time? I know there was 3 contingent
I don't believe there
items.
was any curfew with us. The
We've-
curfew is with the grant applications.
Right, so it doesn't matter if we change grants or not.
I don't believe so.
Okay, good.
The community preservation money was always with the understanding that we may get the 400,000 or we may get the 350.
Right.
And that was the same thing with the East Hampton City Council. So they had allocated the larger sum of money so that if we got the lower grant, which the drinking water is, it's covered. Nobody has to go back.
Right, but it's
So-
contingent on getting a grant, it's one of those grants.
Both of them are contingent on 2 communities and the water, but
So are the owners of the property willing to wait it out with us?
oh, that was part of the original everything, and that's why it was a really super thing to work with. They're with us on it,
Okay.
and they've already, yes,
They're fine.
that they're fully aware of one grant versus the other grant, so they're fine with that.
It's great that they're willing to work with us.
Absolutely. And then the last thing that came up is something that happened to be at BayPAC this afternoon with the member of the planning board who is their representative. And they were talking about something in Westfield, but it's over the Zone 2 for the aquifer, just, that's where our drinking water comes from, just like the aquifer over there on Cooking County Road is where East Hampton's water. It's all the same pool of water underground, basically, but branches of it. And on Root Road, there's a athletic center, and they're putting crumb rubber on the ground as the surface. And the recommendation from BayPAC has been that they put test monitoring wells so that if anything such as zinc, aniline, phenol, and/or benzothiazole leaches out, because it will then leach into the aquifer, that it's known. So the idea was that since it affects Southampton's water, even though it's physically in Westfield, that perhaps you and/or the Water Commission or department might want to write a letter asking that this testing does happen and that you get a copy of the results. I gave Charlie a copy of the letter that was from BayPAC to the athletic center,
He's got it.
and I can,
Pass it down.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we just got this, but my understanding is they're meeting tomorrow night,
Tonight, 7 o'clock.
tonight.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they're going to render a decision tonight. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's on the agenda for the planning board tonight, I believe, at 7.
right, but this is also an ongoing, even if it's ongoing, that the monitoring, you wouldn't just monitor once, you'd monitor every year or any time they dumped more, refreshed the crumb rubber. So you would want to get a copy of the report.
Right. I don't know if you know this, but the BayPAC, Barnes Aquifer Protection Agency, is members from Westfield, Southampton, East Hampton, and Holyoke, and they meet every month, and different projects go before them. So they come up with recommendations of projects they feel that may negatively affect the aquifer, or ways to protect the aquifer. But their recommendations are not binding. They're only recommendations. So being that this property in Westfield is over one of our recharge areas, I know they're meeting tonight, I know it's not on the agenda, but I think it's a very, very important thing for us to discuss, recommending that they seriously consider following the guidelines put out by BayPAC. I think that's important.
I would concur. I'm done.
We want to make a motion to basically endorse the BayPAC's letter
I'll make the motion.
and forward it to the proper
I'll second that.
I've got a question.
discussion.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the fifth
He should have.
bullet here. Says the parameters for sampling should include, gives the chemicals. So it's based on a New York State Department of Health study that indicates potential release of these chemicals from crumb rubber above ground standards, and these parameters will be confirmed in the next months. So it doesn't sound like it's concrete that this is an issue. So whatever we recommend, I think, should take that in mind.
We're making a recommendation that they proceed cautiously with the understanding that there's some unknown questions relative to the product being used.
I could go with that.
You can go with
I
that?
can go with
You
that.
wouldn't really know unless you do it
Right,
well
right.
and monitor it.
Yeah,
And there's all variables with this. If you put this on the surface and, I'm just a dirt farmer, but, a lot of this stuff just binds to the soil and doesn't go down
Yeah.
into the earth. The other thing, VOCs are volatile organic compounds, which evaporate. They don't go down. So unless the thing is basically lighter than water, but I'm not an expert in any of this, but sending a letter basically saying, please look at this.
I think
Seems
that's
like
what
the
we do.
prudent thing to
Yeah,
do.
that makes sense. I just want to make sure we don't recommend something we're not sure of. So if we're just supporting, looking into it more, I think that's great.
Follow the recommendations, I mean,
All right,
I mean-
motion on the floor here. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Unanimous. Jen, did you get that? That was easy, Marla. What happened? That was it? Good time. Thank you. Any questions?
No, thank you.
She's so thorough. She's, yep.
All right,
does a good
planning?
job. Yeah, she does.
Anything going on with the bylaws?
Well, I talked to Bob earlier today, and it's on our agenda for tomorrow night to modify the solar bylaw for we can capture some of that green energy money, I guess, that's available. So he's going to forward that to me. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow night. We're going to set up a public meeting for early January, and if it's successful, we should be able to make the town meeting.
If we move this forward, then I guess it'll make the town eligible for at least $100,000 plus in grant money.
Oh, yeah.
So it's well worth the time to get this moving. All right, we've already heard about the ZBA. Building, I met with the Personnel Board about the building inspector and the fact that he's being paid for 30 hours and the perception is he's working 40. Their recommendation was that he logs in his hours so that we have documentation to show that he is putting this amount of hours in. I sent the board an email basically outlining that, and I copied the building inspector so he knew what was expected of him. I have not heard anything from him, but I have not been in town enough to catch him in the last couple of days. Has anyone else heard anything?
No.
I didn't see him tonight, so.
Okay. Park Commission, I haven't heard anything. Tree Warden, haven't heard anything. Town Accountant, please.
Drum roll.
Huh?
Drum roll.
Drum roll, yeah. So, tree warden's probably gonna need some money at some point, so, just so you know.
Well, you know what happened? There was that little microburst on Gilbert Road at Marla's house.
Yeah.
And that took his budget for a spin right at the beginning.
There's a lot of dead trees, and talking to him the other day in town that, need to just get taken down. It just needs to happen.
Has he said anything about how much money he's gonna need? Because right now, we're looking
No,
at
he has
free
not.
cash.
We haven't sat down and talked about it yet, so.
If I may, Bob, you might want to put that as an article at town meeting to try to replenish his budget. That sounds like something to do.
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
not talking hundreds of thousands.
years ago, it used to be 2,000, and Finance Committee raised it to 10,000, then I believe it got cut back again, but
We
10,000.
cut it last year to 8.
Yeah, and that's not much money if you have a bad year.
No,
And that includes salary as well as
No, that's just his expenses. He doesn't
salary
get
separate.
paid. He doesn't get paid for
Right,
anything.
it used to be salary, and when the former one was there, he said, no, just put it in my expenses, and I'll just deal with it. So it stayed that way.
Yeah, so basically, previous tree warden would just bill us for, where am I here? I can't find it.
there's no budget left.
No, huh? Oh, no. Oh, here we go. Yeah, he's got like $2,500 left.
Yeah.
That doesn't include anything he might have just given us this week, but,
So Bob, just to think, $5,000.
okay, so, we got our free cash certified last week, and in the general fund, there's $496,980. The Water Enterprise Fund has $180,286. And I know some of that they are going to potentially appropriate at town meeting if they can, for the Safe Routes to School project. I just don't know how much yet. And the transfer station had a $7,039 free cash retained earning piece. So that was good, because the past 2 years, it was negative 18,000 and 17,000. Then it was it was up like $2,000, and then it was, like $3,000 or something the year before that. So that was negative. So this is a good step in the right direction. And so with our free cash policy, I'm assuming that at town meeting, January, we're going to appropriate the 35% to capital, the 30% to stabilization, the 10% to OPEB, and then 25% is going to be left for unanticipated expenses for people like myself who needs a new copier. So,
A sales pitch.
hey, yeah, what can I
Is
say?
that a plug? Is that
Yes,
what
it was a plug. It was a plug.
Unabashed plug.
Exactly. Because currently I can't print anything. But anyway, so yeah, there's 124,000. That would leave $124,245 for, potentially to people to put articles on the town meeting warrant. The one thing I was thinking about and looking at the dollars, what we have currently versus what we are potentially going to put in there based on that free cash policy, I'm wondering if we shouldn't modify those percentages and maybe put a little bit more into capital, because it seems, or we could transfer from operating to capital, I guess, but it just seems as if there's a lot of projects, capital projects, that kind of need our attention.
There is, and a lot of discussions have been coming at me now because of this money becoming available. some of them are one-time capital expenses though, so it may be just as easy just to take it out of it as a one-time expense.
Yes.
Another thing, and I sent an email to the board, I don't know if I copied you, but we pulled 23,000 out of capital at our last town meeting because we needed to spend that for the library and stuff.
The 20 was for the library, the 3,200 was out of operating, actually, for the police chief. It wasn't out of
I'd
capital.
like to see 2 articles to put that money back out
Right.
of that free cash so that we make that whole again.
You were copied on that, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, you asked me that question, and you asked me the question, yes.
You said you wanted to put it back in, yeah.
Yeah,
remember
because
that.
I think that, we used that as an emergency account, we dealt with our emergencies, now let's put the money back in there so that it's,
Well, let's, the taxpayers know that if we don't use it, we put it back, too.
right. So,
But the thing is about the library, I think if originally, when we appropriated that money for the whole HVAC system, we would have appropriated that 20 grand anyway, because it was going to cost us more than the original $47,000,
right.
correct? So,
But if we put it back in the capital account and we have a capital need down the road, we have some money in that budget to deal with it again. If we keep taking from it and hoping free cash formulas take and puts it back, that's a gamble. We don't know what free cash next year is gonna be, but if we
no,
know now, we can put the money in.
okay.
And if we need to go to Maytown meeting and pull it out of there, it's there. I'm just trying to balance this in my mind as to the best way to do this.
Yeah, since we set those accounts up, we should use them properly.
Right. But that's just my gig to this thing.
No, agreed.
You guys all can have a different opinion. Jackie's not saying a word to me, so I'm not quite sure.
So if we were to transfer the money in January with the current balances, operating would have $411,557 and some change. Capital, not talking the $2,300, 23,000, sorry, you'd have $177,976, because there's like $4,000 left in there now.
So about 200,000 when we add the 20-something back. And that's not a whole lot of money for capital projects.
No,
No, and it should be there for unanticipated problems.
My guess is we're gonna have more requests than 200,000.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
well, that's why I'm suggesting maybe at some point maybe you take some out of operating instead.
Just the computers close to that.
And then OPEB would be $125,402.
Do you remember what we were recommended to have in that account?
When we did the actuarial study, Donna had it done 2 years ago, the ARC was about $756,000. And so we will have a new one done this year, so our ARC will be a little bit different. So we're still
Way below.
way below.
Yeah.
So this is obviously a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But what will happen is, it looks like we're doing something, but at one point, the bond rating companies, Moody's or S&P, are going to go, time out, you're not doing enough. You need to put more money away. And so that's not going to look very favorable for us. So
It might become advantageous for us to transfer more money.
to transfer more money in there. Some communities, what they do is, when they hire a new person, they put in, the money they would need for retirement, they put in that fund for that new person when they hire somebody new. So the money's already there for the new people going forward, but then you still have to backfill with the money for the people who are already retired, or potentially that are already hired that are going to be retired. So, but we're going to have to amp that up at some point. I mean, 125 isn't bad, but it's better than nothing, but we still are, $600,000 short, a little bit, so. But it's this was a good start, so. So, that's the scoop.
So it's all positive, it's just, we're not moving as fast as we should, but it is positive.
What do you mean that move? Oh, yes, the OPEB, correct.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah.
All right. Okay, let's see any questions.
Question. I am aware of a community that floated a bond and covered their entire OPEB obligation.
Oh, that's interesting.
I wonder if that's something we should consider, and you'd have annual payments for whatever amount of time. You could do a 20-year bond probably, since it's a long-term obligation. And you'd have stable payments, relatively low compared to, it wouldn't be $125,000 a year. And then you'd have some additional funds to use for other purposes.
Sounds like a good way to spread it out.
Sounds like something for you to...
Wellesley did it. Wellesley did it. They were the first community to do it in the Commonwealth. They're paid up.
Were you there at the time, or did you just heard this through?
No,
channels?
I heard a presentation that they wanted to do it all at once. That's how they did it. With low interest rates, it also makes sense.
Sure. Sounds like we should get some information on that.
So it's definitely something to look into. You know, I would wait until we get the new study back to see kind of, and then, you know, with looking into that and talking to our financial advisor, he would definitely be able to kind of steer us, you know, in that direction, or in some other direction of other communities that, what he's seen. You know, he deals with all the bond companies and all the ratings and all that, and he deals with a lot of communities, so he could be able to give us some sort of insight into what he thinks we should, kind of where we should go, but that's definitely a good,
I think the point you were making, Bob, is that we'd have maybe $100,000 extra every year because our payments would be a lot less.
Yes.
So you're going to find out about the options that we have rather than lump sums every year?
well, no, I mean, the thing about the lump sum is that you can, but then you got to make sure you budget for that. That would be the piece. But that's not a bad way to go. I guess we can always view our options and see what other communities have come up with.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see what other communities have and find out if it's worthwhile.
You know, and find out what do the bond rating companies expect us to have at this stage of the game, you know, because it's fairly new.
Yeah.
You know, do they want you to have 10%, 20%, 50%, 70% of it, you know, accounted for? So,
So I guess the question is, who are we going to task with that one?
Well, Bob's got
You wanna do it?
linkage.
I'll do it.
we can work together on that. And Donna will be, you know, because she knows about the borrowing piece and all that, we can kind of,
If we can give it to Bob.
Treasurer
and work-
collector, the treasurer collector in Wellesley was once the chairman of the finance committee in another community where I worked, so I know him pretty well.
Okay, so
We're
maybe,
not going to get into this, are we?
so we have
but you have to
Bob,
explore all the options that you
with-
have, I think.
Right, with Vicki.
Vicky and Donna?
Yeah.
Sure,
Let's let the finance group listen to it and go from there.
yeah,
You know.
right.
Very good.
So,
Thank you.
that's what I
Thank
got.
you.
Do you have time for the public at the beginning?
We did.
We did.
Oh, okay.
But we can redo, right?
Yeah, we can do it.
We can open it up again.
Step-
Have it at the end then, or?
Well,
we don't want it at the end.
we can put it wherever the chair would like to.
Yes. Open time for public.
Just a quick
He-
follow-up,
He just called for
The
the open
door's
time.
open.
yeah.
You gotta go to the podium.
Oh,
You gotta introduce yourself.
Okay.
My name's
Sorry.
Terry Hoag. I live on Cook Road, and I'm just following up on our letter that the neighbors signed about the speed bumps.
I have not seen that letter.
I brought it in tonight,
There you go.
Love that.
Well, I'm glad I came,
yeah.
and I have a couple more signatures since we brought it in.
Okay. Oh, I hate that. Everything just shows up in one shot. Okay, thank you. Well, given the fact that we just got it,
Well, why don't you just read it, since he had it? When did you send it? At least a week, you got that letter
I have
out.
no problem reading it aloud.
You got that letter quite a while ago. I mean, we put that in the mail quite a while ago.
I think it was mid-November. But,
Is it dated?
It's dated November 9th.
Okay.
This is like, we are requesting that a couple of speed bumps be added to Cook Road in Southampton. I found from an article about the issue in the Gazette that they cost around $3,000 each. There are two curves in the road which make it dangerous for speeders. I've enclosed photos of the recent marks on the road from people who have been speeding and had to stop short.
I gave those to you, I submitted those to you.
Yeah, we saw those last time, yeah.
About 3 years ago, we had people drag racing, and they nearly hit a neighbor's car carrying 3 small children head-on. They ended up missing the main gas line by 6 inches, bending the surrounding fence. We've had 2 dangerous accidents within the last few months, and it's just a matter of time before someone gets seriously hurt. With winter ahead, the roads will even be more dangerous. We have many walkers, joggers, bicyclists who exercise regularly on the road. It's very dangerous at this point. We'd appreciate you taking action on this as soon as possible. Signs don't seem to be working here. Very sincerely, Cookwood Road neighbors. Let me, off the cuff, let me explain to you that we can't just arbitrarily just put speed bumps out there. The first thing that would have to happen is if this board decides this, and that's gonna be with feedback from the highway department and the police
Yeah,
department.
you had said that. I thought you'd already gotten a letter, so.
And then the letter would have gone to those parties. But if they come back saying to us that we need to study this, then we have to hire an engineering firm to do a traffic study.
But hopefully they won't, because it's gonna cost money. Hopefully they can just, you know,
They won't. There will be a traffic study.
who will ask for that?
That'll come out of this board.
No, you guys would ask for a study.
We would, if we get recommendations from the police department and the highway department that there's an issue here that needs to be addressed, then the next thing we would be doing is looking at a traffic study. The question of the traffic study is gonna be, how much is it gonna cost? And where's
How much is the,
traffic study, not the bumps, the traffic
right,
study.
that's what I was asking.
Okay, no,
I have
I'm trying to, you need to stand at the podium so the audience on television can hear you.
Okay,
But we need to do a traffic study because of the fact that none of us here are qualified to make a judgment when it comes to changing traffic patterns of what is safe and appropriate. That's why we hire an engineering firm to do that. Money needs to be allocated for that. So the question's gonna be, what's the estimated cost for hiring this? Then that money has to come from some budget at this point, okay? We just did Wolcott Road, and what was that, $3,000?
$3,000 for the signs?
Yeah,
Each
3,000.
one, right?
Pardon?
It was for each sign?
No,
No.
the traffic study was $3,000.
Oh, right, right.
The engineering study was $3,000. And then those engineers come back and tell the town, this is the safest way to approach this.
okay,
So there's a process.
Right.
It's not like we go and tell the highway department, we want you to take your hot box out there, pour some asphalt down there, put some paint on it and drive away.
right. Well, we got that at the last meeting. We got that you asked us to get the signatures, which we did.
Now we have the signature.
So you have the signatures, and then you're gonna go to the police department and the highway department and get their take on it.
Right.
And then depending on their take,
That'll
Then you're
come
gonna-
back to this board. It'll be posted as part of the meeting. You'll have an opportunity when that happens to take and come back here, and I'll be candid with you, you're not gonna see it December 20th, it's gonna be in January, to basically state your case again. And then this board will make a decision whether to move forward with a traffic study, and where the money's gonna come to do that traffic study.
now, what happens if, because this has happened in the past on Cook Road, the neighbors have donated already several $1,000s to save land and whatnot. What if some of the neighbors donated money for the traffic study? How would that fit in?
Well, that'd be more power to you. I mean, the reality is it would save one part of the issue. If police and fire come back saying, yeah, we think there's an issue, and we vote to move a traffic study, and you want to donate money, then I'm going to refer you to the town administrator of just how that would work, because you can't just simply cut a check to the town, because anytime you cut a check to the town, it goes to that magic place called the general fund.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that we can work that part out, right? That's pretty much just cut and dried, a mathematical
I was
thing,
going to say, safety is the real issue,
definitely.
and the traffic study will determine what is the safest approach. If cars are speeding at a relatively higher rate of speed, they hit a speed bump, and the safety issue is the driver could lose control of the car and end up in your front yard.
Yeah, but the point is that there's a lot of speed bumps. I got this idea from the town of Northampton, and I'm sure you've traveled Florence Road.
I purposely went there and took a look at what you were saying. And yes,
Florence Road.
It's on Florence Road, it's almost into Florence. It's on top of a hill, and it's got a curve.
No, I mean on the regular Florence Road that goes from Route 10 right up to Florence Main Street. I don't think there's a big
The
hill.
intersection of Ryan Road.
Yeah, all around there, I think. And Burt Pitt Road, there's two speed bumps right on there, and it slows traffic way down.
Dunkin' Donuts, and you go that way, and your first intersection at the Burt's Pit Road, it's right
I
there.
didn't see it there.
There's two big speed bumps there.
Good speed bumps.
Yeah, you're going too fast, you didn't see them.
Well, anyway, that's,
In general, the more residential the community, the more residential the street, the more effective a speed bump is.
well,
The more it's an arterial street, the more the traffic engineers are going to have some issues with safety.
well, I don't know what you mean by an arterial street.
I
We
mean,
have about 20 houses on the street, probably.
not residential.
Yeah, they're not residential, they're an arterial street between Hoyoke and East Hampton.
Well, anyway, so what I will do is just wait to hear about,
It's in process.
yeah,
Now
so,
that we actually have this,
It will,
it's in process.
I will expedite this. This was in a pile that I inherited, and I just got whittled down, frankly, in the last
okay.
day or so.
So should I contact you around January 1st? And, okay, I think that's all that I have.
Very good.
And I guess I would suggest when it goes on the agenda, bring as many folks as you can to support it.
Okay, all right.
How about me?
Might as well hear
The
from them.
more the merrier,
Hey, you know,
right?
anyone else for open time? You just walked in, come on.
Might as well.
All right, I live on 31 Gun Road, and we've had an issue recently. We received this paper today from the Board of Health.
What's your name?
Mike Daigle. So we had a water test done, and for the past potentially 2 years, we've been drinking feces and E. coli and bacteria. That's what we tested positive for. And we haven't been able to get any help from the town. And me and my neighbor have been calling, our whole street did tests. Me and my neighbor have it the worst. We've been calling the town board of health, he has been, and getting not many return phone calls. If anything, it's just, you didn't do your water test right. We've had scientists come in and do the water test. They're telling us we can't drink our water, we can't shower in our water, we can't wash our clothes, nothing with our water. The only people to be able to help us was the town of East Hampton, because we called them, begging them for help, and they gave us these kits to put in our well to clean it out. Now, a letter we received today states that the town is not responsible for any of that. It's private water source. I can understand that, except for the fact that the house 2 houses up from us, we're under the impression that they failed their Title V, and it's been multiple years now, and nothing's been done about it. So what the town is responsible for is negligence on their part for the Title V. I mean, I don't know if anybody has anything to say about that, but,
I have quite a background in public health,
okay.
and I must be candid with you. First, you're approaching the wrong board.
Well, we just came out, we thought this was a public meeting tonight, like a town meeting,
It is
so I
a-
apologize,
It's a
but,
selectmen's meeting, okay?
Yeah.
The issue is the fact that the Board of Health is an elected board,
Mm-hmm.
so we have no authority over that board. So you need to meet with that board about these issues.
we tried calling them, contacting them, like, they will not return phone calls, or if they do, it was a really rude phone call where they returned. Just really rude to my mother, it's her house.
Have you spoken to the chairman of that board?
Sally called me, Shelley called me on a Saturday morning, was extremely rude and yelling at me, that I didn't call in to tell.
You need to get
Can
up
you
to the
come-
podium.
yeah.
Introduce yourself, please. This is on camera, by the way.
I'm Barbara
just so you-
Daigle.
Oh, yeah, that's,
Okay, I'm
No, just-
Barbara Daigle. I own the house, my son Michael. I did not call because I'm not the type of person to, keep bugging somebody, okay? Dave Felty was handling it. He called them, he told the Board of Health everything that's going on. When he could finally get through to them, like we said, we had to go to East Hampton first because nobody in Southampton would help us. So I run a preschool and daycare out of my home as well. And I can't get my new license without a clear well water test, which is going to also attack my livelihood, which is really getting on my nerves right now. We can't get anywhere. We're getting nowhere. Then we finally get a letter like this from them, from the Board of Health, that says that they are not responsible and they're not going to help us. They gave us the number for a DEP to have a new well drilled. Well, when I told Shelley on the phone, A new well is not going to help us. They have ruined our aquifer, okay? Dave's water and my water, and the only reason we know is because I have to get my water tested every 2 years for my license, okay? That's the only reason we know. 2 years ago, my water was fine. 3.5 years ago, town of Southampton let them move into Mr. Payette's house, these kids that bought it, and knowing that it was a cash sale house, knowing that it was a failed Title V, they have an old cesspool there. It's a
They've been
failed
sprinkling
Title
lime on
V.
it to get the smell to go away.
It's been smelling so bad all summer. Yeah, they've been sprinkling lime to hold the smell down. And now it's raped into our well. They told us, oh, we don't believe you.
All right, let's stop here, okay? First, Board of Health is autonomous because of the election. We don't have direct control over them. That
It
said,
does.
actually, the voters, that's about it.
So, I mean, we can't do anything, like,
Well, let me finish.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm very versed in the public health laws. And the responsibility of maintaining your well on a private property is the private owner of the property, not the town,
Right. I get that.
okay? So you need to have somebody cradle to grave water test, sanitary survey of your well to determine if there's any lateral connections between the surface and that well for water supply. It could be something just coming from the fact that the well cap's not there, or it's cracked, or the pitless adapter, there's a valve that's on the side of the well that may be leaking and putting water
For
through it.
both my neighbor and I?
It could be, I don't know, I'm just saying. The point is, it doesn't become the town's responsibility. As for the issue of your neighbor's septic system failing and polluting your well, the Board of Health has some responsibility to follow through with that and repairing the septic system,
Right.
but that's up to them. But if you feel your neighbor has encroached on you, that's a civil suit between two parties, not the town.
The town is negligent.
According to the DEP website, they were stating that the town has the burden of making sure the septic systems work, especially in Title Vs. They're in control of all Title Vs. So if
They are.
it doesn't pass Title V and you issue occupancy,
Why are they
how
living
is
there?
that, why are they even living there? Like, that's negligence on the town's part,
That's something you need to
or on the
talk.
Board of Health's part, not the town, maybe the Board of Health's
I
part.
mean, you
but-
need to talk to the Board of Health. We don't have any control over the Board of Health. I'm trying to.
Yeah, I get it. You have to understand how frustrating we are. It's been a month. It's been a
We
month.
can't shower,
We
we
can't
can go
do
somewhere to
anything.
shower.
I have to go to my daughter's to shower, I have to go to the laundromat to do my laundry.
You say your well's polluted, you
Yes.
say all statements, but what does the actual well test say?
It says E. coli.
How many?
I'd have to see it, I have the test at home, I'm sorry, I didn't bring it. It's E. coli, it's bacteria,
Coli is
and
bacteria.
and feces, okay?
It
Well,
doesn't
this is
test
how it
it.
lists, this is how it lists.
This is Ty and Bond's test, the test that the
Not
state
Time and Bond, it's
requires.
Howard Lab.
Howard Labs.
It's Howard Labs, they tested for nitrates and they tested for ammonia.
And the nitrate was,
The nitrates are, I don't remember what the number is, but it states that it is human feces.
it states it's human feces.
Yes.
Because nitrates can be from fertilizer on the ground.
Right,
Which could be the line that you said that they're spreading.
No, fertilizer, not lime.
could be the farm,
But you don't know what they're
Could
putting
be-
on it.
could be,
Lime is,
could be the farm, which also the town was negligent in, because they let them double their livestock, they let them
A question I
put in a
have.
new barn without,
Well, we don't
drainage.
have any control of the Board of Health, but they could talk to the building inspector to find out if indeed we issued that building permit and if everything was okay at the time.
I don't believe there was any occupancy.
What
Someone
building permit?
purchased a house.
It's an old house. They said it's an old house, so there's no building permit.
there was no building
Did you
permit.
say there was an occupancy
Yes,
permit?
they,
So that would be the building.
as far as we
commissioner.
know, they were issued an occupancy permit
Why?
to live in that house because they bought it.
No.
Well, you don't
just
need one when you buy it.
You buy a house, you don't need an occupancy permit.
So if it fails Title V, you can just move in.
Well, we would know.
That should have come to the Board of Health.
Board of Health.
Right.
I'm asking a
Board of Health, under
question.
DEP regulations, if they don't feel it's an imminent health risk, they have up to 2 years to upgrade the septic system.
And 3.5.
I'm just,
Yeah, I'm just saying too, hey, we're frustrated as hell.
I had a call from your neighbor today,
Dave,
Mr. Felty,
yep.
who was claiming that it's your system that is polluting his.
No, not ours.
Well water.
It's the one, it's not
And-
ours, it's the one next to it.
So I went over to the Board of Health, talked with the health director, who showed me the two letters, one to you and one to Mr. Felty. And as Charlie said, their position is that this is private property, and the homeowner is responsible on private property. Also, I think it's 4,000 feet to the nearest town water connection, so that's not practical. It'd be prohibitively expensive to connect with town water. And their position is that if you or your neighbor are negatively affected by the other party, that you've got civil action as your, basically as your option at this point.
Well, we already have retained a lawyer. It's that this is getting ridiculous.
But his position is that it's your failed septic system that is polluting his well water. He
Not
pointed out
mine.
that his
Not mine.
septic system was in failure, and that he has put a new septic system in.
Correct, Dave has.
Yes.
He wasn't complaining about us. We
He's complaining about the other side of the house.
I'm sorry?
He's not complaining about us. We retained a lawyer with Dave.
Against the house.
Against the house.
It's the other
Above
house.
the
Okay,
other
all
side
right,
of Dave.
Okay.
It's Dave and I who
Give me
are,
the name of the people.
okay, it's Dave and I that are,
Then I saw the letter, and when I saw the letter with your name on it, I thought you were the other party.
oh,
No,
no,
we're the
no.
affected
We're the
parties.
two affected parties.
Bob, can you send a memo over to the Board of Health that they came in to present themselves to the Board of Selectmen?
I mean, I didn't know you guys.
We don't know where to go.
We're trying to go one
It's
step
so
up, a step
frustrating.
over, step anywhere, just to get an answer or help or anything.
And I hate to push it right back to the Board of Health, but the Board of Health has jurisdiction in this.
So does
And she
DEP
won't
have
do anything.
jurisdiction over them? So if we call it DEP, then they can help us?
I have rarely seen a state agency take jurisdiction on something
It potentially affects the manhand. Right by our
Or
house.
the EPA.
small. I mean, I could see the state taking jurisdiction if it was a manufacturing plant or something like that. And I'm being honest with you, I haven't seen, and I've done this work for almost 40
Yeah.
years. I haven't seen the state ever take jurisdiction. It's gonna go right back to the local Board of Health. You need to plead your case with the local Board of Health, and you need to work with them in conjunction.
We have-
So we'll be here so we come at 6:30 tomorrow morning, and she's here, that's the only person we can talk to?
I would send a formal letter to the Board of Health asking for a meeting to discuss this.
She said
You're
that they were-
asking me, that's not any legal advice or anything, but that's the first thing I would do, send a letter basically saying you need to have a meeting with them.
Right?
How do you know their septic system has failed? There was no-
Because we know the
Dave has
people.
copies of it,
Yeah,
and we know
Dave-
the people that sold it,
Yeah, Dave has copies of everything. He already came down here, got copies of everything.
even the
They're
plans.
Copies
failed.
from the
plans for
town?
their
Yep, their
cesspool.
failed Title V and everything.
In what department did you get those from?
I believe he got it from the Board of Health before they found out what was going on. We have
Properties
proof.
transferred under state regulations, they're required to have an inspection done.
Title V.
Right,
Yeah.
and that report goes to the Board of Health. That's what triggers the Board of Health to take an action if they deem necessary.
So if indeed they had a report that said it was failed, what action would they take to make sure that it is corrected?
It will depend on what the failure criteria is. There's conditional passing, and there's failing. I mean, if they had ponding on the surface, discharging into a wetlands, something like that, then it would probably be immediate action. If it was the fact that the D-box was flooding, then that would mean it's in failure, but it's marginally working, and...
Time to replace the D-box.
Time where it's D-box. Appreciate the fact when you say a septic system is failing, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's polluting the neighborhood.
Right.
It could be that it's not functioning properly to process the waste,
But
okay?
it's still contained.
It's still contained, and there's still a biomass that develops around the leach field. That biomass is what knocks down the pathogens and controls this.
Excuse me, he doesn't have a septic system. He has a cesspool. And it's behind the garage. It's no bigger a circle than this. It's behind the garage with 100-foot trees growing out of it.
Well, it's in failure.
It's in major failure.
No,
It's in major
but
failure.
That's the Board of Health, it's not us.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no saving what he's
Charlie,
got.
one more point. When I spoke to the health director today, she said that the Board of Health is not going to take any action
Right.
until they see data that they consider reliable from a reputable firm that did testing. And they
We
said-
did that.
They said they don't,
Submitted it.
We already did that, and we already
well, that
gave
they
it to
do not
him.
have, did not
I
have
don't know what she's doing with it.
data that
They told us we did it
require.
ourselves
It's actually,
because I
we
have
actually have
to.
it all dated and chrono, every phone call, everything with them.
We did all that.
That's what I was told.
Yeah,
They
I'm
don't
not,
have
I'm not getting on your
data.
case, I'm
Even
saying, we
it's-
did all that,
it's all
and then we
dated
hired
down.
them, and that woman came down and she did every single person on our street, on that side of the street. And we all have to pay for this.
All the information.
You know, I've already had like 3 or 4 tests done now, you know, and had a whole Title V.
Where you had
It's-
someone come out to do testing?
Yes, because that's what they
The
wanted.
scientists from the
She said
place
they didn't
she
believe
said
us
they
that
had to
we
do from.
had, that we could have contaminated our containers. Well, we didn't. We got it from Howard Labs. They're sealed. We open it, we take the well water test. I've been doing it every year, every 2 years for 27 years now. And she says, oh, you could have contaminated. Okay, so we had the biologist come out and do it herself.
May I
And she did everybody on our street.
May I ask, have you had a licensed well driller take a look at your well to see if it's?
No.
Because that just doesn't make any sense.
I can't
mean, that drills
afford all
straight into the
this.
rock. I don't understand how the neighbor 2 doors down could have contaminated her well.
If it was a rock
Shit
well,
runs downhill, that's the thing.
you could get contaminated.
We're downhill.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we are. We really
Good
are.
call.
I don't want to be rude to you, but.
I know.
No, I understand you completely, it's just,
It's
you
just
know, we
so
just wanted to come somewhere and
frustrating.
just say something, so you guys are at least aware of the situation, maybe that's going on that we're dealing with. I mean, it's just, we're bashing our head against the wall, literally
I mean, the Board of Health,
asking buddies for showers. I mean, this sucks.
Board of Health has a regularly scheduled meeting. I'd suggest you go to their next meeting.
When
Look
is
up, look up when
Is that
it
what
is.
we have on the board out here?
It's on our website or on the board.
Should be on that calendar.
Okay.
Bring all your information and put it on record right there.
I mean, it's like the next step we were thinking is like, what do we call 22 News and say they won't help us? You know, because we called them 100 times and
We're fed up.
I'd go to the Board of Health and make it official on the, right there in the minutes.
well, we appreciate you guys' time with it. I mean, like I
Thank
said,
you.
we just had to vent, tell somebody in the
No,
town
we
what's
understand.
going on, because it's
I
like,
know, that's what
we're just like freaking out, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
The venting session.
it's just
We're
getting
getting nowhere.
bad. I mean, we're getting,
You
it
know, we have
seems
to
like
go to another town to do it. and
pushing a rock up a
It's
hill.
gonna
and
affect
it's
my
not going.
business, that's my livelihood,
I
you
mean,
know?
if the town water ran it by your house, then it would be simply,
Right, we hook up, it is no big deal.
Hook up in a
that's not the
heartbeat.
case there.
No, it's not.
So-
We're the only, like, what, 10 houses on the street that don't have it. It comes to the farm and it comes to the bridge. We're a little space that doesn't have it.
Nope.
Why, I
Water
don't
goes
know.
to the farm? They
Water
have
goes to the
town-
farm. Oh, that's another little funny case, because they only put in a 2-inch pipe instead of a 4-inch, so we can't even use that, 'cause it won't give us...
If we paid for it to come
Years
down.
ago, before
Okay.
DEP oversight and fire suppression and all the rest of that kicked in, and DEP doesn't allow dead-end mains. The purpose of having a main connected to another street is so the water circulates and keeps it flowing cleaner. So having a long branch that just sits out there dead
I
like
see.
that gives you a pocket of stagnant water,
Yeah.
which allows bacteria and everything else to grow.
So, good luck. Sorry we can't help you.
Okay,
All right, well,
thank
thanks for your
you.
time, guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, it is. It's my street.
Sure. You want to ask me?
Well, anyone else for open time to the public?
By my house, but I don't have it.
Hey, I gotta be candid, I didn't expect that conversation.
Well,
It's all right.
no, it's good to hear.
Yeah.
And hopefully, we can go to the next Board of Health meeting.
Well, they need to focus with the Board of Health. That's the agency in town that deals with that.
I can see it being frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay, old business, management's responsibility transfer station. I recommend that we pass over this until we get more data.
I agree.
Okay. Approval of payroll. Jackie, I think you and Shannon have that.
There you go.
Mr. Bray, is there something you'd like to approach the board with?
I'm not Mr. Bray.
That's Mr. Jim.
It's Palermo.
Palermo, that's right.
Boy, I'm
Yeah,
in great form, ain't I?
I've been called worse, Charlie.
I know. Is there anything you would like to approach the board with?
Well, no. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
I was here for the,
I was in Boston today. I'm tired, and that's my excuse.
You were here for what?
no, I was just interested in the transfer station.
Oh.
thing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's an ongoing, more information to come type
Right.
situation there.
Good. Thank you.
So stay tuned, Jim. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Jim. I am shot. I didn't even get started. Oh, well. So you're not going to read this in? You're going to hand it to me?
Really?
I'm going to hand it to you.
Yeah.
Hand it to the boys over there. They have something to do.
I'm like,
gonna read.
passing the buck.
Okay.
Sir.
All right, we have a warrant dated 12/8/2016, warrant number W17-23 for the amount of $222,679.36. That's that one. Let me read them all. Okay.
Yep.
And this one.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't think.
That's it, that's the only one. That's it, the only one we got.
I hear a motion.
What's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion.
Take some more.
Second.
All in favor of approving payroll?
Aye.
1723.
Does he have a stack of minutes over there?
It's just handed to me.
Yeah, because I know we have a ton of minutes. Do you have the minutes?
Minutes
Yeah,
to,
there's like a stack of minutes to approve. Do you
They're
have them?
in the Dropbox.
So we don't have them in paper form anymore?
Not today.
Okie dokie.
I didn't do that.
Bob?
Alrighty.
put them all in the Dropbox and make it
I
easier
know,
for
I just
everybody.
like the paper
was all set.
form, but okay.
Okay.
Did you
You know,
sign?
paper form usually is over 100 pieces of paper.
I know.
We have to save some trees.
Unless there's something. A question, Bob. There's two other warrants, W1723, two separate ones for two separate totals. Is there a cover sheet for these, for
Did you
both of
read
them? Or do you want me to do them individually?
That's what was brought in. It was brought in late today, so I didn't have a chance to look at it, so.
Good golly.
Okay, so, why don't you go on to the next thing, give me a minute, and I'll make sure.
All right, well, I'm going to jump over and go down to ECAT, seeing Kathy's still here, and she's the only one in the audience. I just try to be courteous to people that are just sitting here, instead of making them sit here for
Hello,
things
sitting
that-
here. I said, hello, we're
And
sitting here.
here's what I'm going to do to improve upon my performance last week. Kathy Lynch, Executive Director of East Hampton Media.
Whoa,
How's that for my
That's
government
great,
training?
yeah.
Coming in.
I'm like crazy woman that just runs up and.
Yeah.
Yelling.
I know, and it was a problem. We're moving forward. So we are here tonight to ask the board to amend our current service contract, which currently in section 14 reads that we receive 1% of the gross annual revenue, which was your PEG payment, to bring it up to date in accordance with the cable contract that the board signed last week, which would be the 3%. And that, in summary, is why we're here. And also, if there's any questions that the board has about the agency or the direction, I'd be happy to spend a few minutes talking about it, too.
I sent the board an email sort of outlining the meeting that Shannon and Kathy and I had about where this was going. The 3% is, in line with where our contract's going, and that's real. This is going to trigger some events that are going to happen in town that I think are pretty better in a relationship of open government. In the relationship of open government, what's going to happen is we are going to be looking to install in this room not only the cameras we have, but also a recording feature so that when the cameras go down for whatever reason, we can just press a button and still record it and still have it available to broadcast. We are also going to be looking to take and put a recording feature in the second floor conference room in this building so that when other boards meet, they're going to be able to record their meetings, and then we'll be able to put them back on ECAT and on the web for people to take and review so they can understand what their government's doing. We're going to also put a third option of placing one in the, I'll
Workroom.
call it the break room, down on the first floor here. So there's a third meeting room that can record. This will allow boards that are small, that are having small meetings, to still be able to record their meetings so that the public can view what's going on. The next thing that's going to happen is we're going to have a connection at the school for a live feed. So that means when town meeting occurs in May, the hope is it'll be a live feed for people in town to see, as well as recording it. We're also looking at having a feed in there so that the school committee's meetings will now be recorded, and people will be able to see what the school committee has voted on and moved forward with. We're also looking to, and now this is all being funded, by the way, it's with our Charter Warner contract that we just signed. So it's not money coming out of the town directly. We're also looking to put a live feed in our library on East Street. That will also allow the library operations and what they're presenting to be able to go out for the audience in town. We're looking at the possibility of putting a drop in the Conant Park Pavilion, so when we have concerts and stuff, that'll be able to be broadcast. The other part to this, by putting them in the school and putting them in the library, is going to allow our school department to start utilizing our cable access system to be involved in their educational process with the students on broadcasting and putting together stuff. And the hope is eventually to spin this off to some of the sporting activities in town.
Oh, yay.
Because that'll also be something that'll be available through the library, through the school, through this town hall. So you're going to see in the next few years a lot of growth in our cable access, based on the contracts you guys all signed last week. And Bob?
May I interject?
Absolutely.
I brought another signatory sheet.
Yes.
We sent the contract with the original signatures to Charter, but scanned it first. They came back to us and said, we want the original sheet. We then, Velda doesn't have it, I don't have it. Best guess is that it was scanned and might have been left in the machine and disappeared. So if you'll sign this, I'll get it to them tomorrow.
Can you photocopy that so there's 3 of them?
Yes.
So we can sign 3, so you have an original and 2 go to them?
Okay.
Because timing on this is critical,
Yes.
because until they sign the contract,
Right.
we're losing 2%.
Electronic signatures in
Although I think it
Massachusetts are
will
legal.
date to the contract should be dated back to the original lap,
I've
so.
spoken to the attorneys about that and got a very nice smile.
Kind of like this one?
Doesn't carry as much as theirs.
True.
Hey, we're now looking at quarterly payments instead of annual payments. That's going to help us with our cash flow.
Yeah.
We were looking at our PEG grants as being 30,000, now it's going to be 50,000, so that's going to help us with more startup
The
equipment
quarterly
fees and
payments
stuff.
was only for the first couple of years, right? The quarterly payments for the first couple of years?
No, for the whole year, for the whole life of the contract,
Oh, it was?
yeah.
So we think this could all be up and in place by March of 17, is that what you're saying?
We'll see, so.
That's the hope.
Right, and it's, this, what Charlie's talking about really, what the chairman is talking about is our capital planning.
Right.
So what will happen is, I'd actually would like to wait until after the first of the year to start working on it intensively, because there's a few product lines that will be launching. I've been waiting for one that's threatening to launch. And so what we're doing is looking at the technology and saying what makes the most sense for this room, what is going to give the community the most bang for the buck, what's going to be maintainable, and then probably what we'll want to do, I mean, in tandem, is synchronize the East Hampton Government Studio with similar styled equipment so that whomever is coming in to operate can operate any system. And that it's really, because we're now serving 2 communities, it makes sense for all of our staff to use the same systems. And so if somebody gets sick, there's no crisis. I mean, and really what we've been looking at is, I know that the previous town administrator's last meeting, we had an equipment failure, and it's not surprising that a 30-year-old piece of equipment died. But, I mean, I'm impressed that it lasted that long. It's great. So I think that it will improve the picture quality. You know, adding expanded government access has done a world of wonders for a lot of communities and saved them a lot of money. And I feel like I can document that by saying, consider attorney's fees in open meeting law violations. And that's money that, those violations and complaints tend to go away or decrease as people understand what actually was said, because they can see it. It's also great for committee members who can't make that day, because they can just watch it, and they can still participate, they can hear the discussion, they can stay abreast of stay on top of what the issues are.
Also makes people think before they speak.
It can, yes,
There you go.
yes.
And the
I
best
didn't
way
prove
to-
that to be true last week, but this week, yes.
Point, I need a motion from this board to re-ratify the contract.
Is it amending the contract? Okay.
No, this is this contract.
Oh.
The charter contract, and the reason being, Jackie wasn't present at the last meeting, and now she's signing it. So I want to have a vote that reflects that the entire board,
If the vote is positive,
she
everybody
should
can
be
sign
signing
right?
it, she wasn't present.
You don't have to be present, I don't think, do you?
Well, not to approve minutes, but this, I'm thinking different, yeah.
All right, so move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sign it.
And that's for this contract, not for the ECAD contract. Okay. I just don't want the attorneys coming back to me.
That's right.
What say is that, 6th?
Yes. Let's see.
Okay, while you're doing that, you want me to do this warrant?
Birthday.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Jacob's
have
birthday.
a second warrant, it's warrant W17-23, it's in two parts, there's no cover sheet, so one section is for $52,893.22, and the second is for $78,666.61. I'll make the motion, we accept it.
I'll second.
No, this
All in
is-
favor?
No,
Aye.
it's not a payroll one.
Unanimous?
Aye. Yeah. And Bob, there's no signature sheet on this, so you want us to just sign?
Sign somewhere.
Okay. We'll start it.
Here's the contract. Now, the other thing on the table is amending ECAD, East Hampton Cable Access contract to reflect 3% rather than 1%. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Does the board authorize me to sign this contract when it's redone?
Sure.
Oh, fine
Yes.
with it.
You want a motion, or you
I
just,
would like a motion and a vote.
I'll make the motion to have you
Second it.
sign it.
The only thing changing is from 1 to 3%.
you got a motion and a second there?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can you repeat that? I have that you're changing it from 1% instead of 3%.
crap.
1% to 3%.
Oh, 2 to 3%. Okay. Thank you.
10% would have been nicer.
We're going to do amazing things with 10%.
The mountains you are moving.
Baby steps.
Jen, did you get that? Jen, did you get that 1 to 3% authorizing the chairman to sign the contract by vote of the board? I don't know who made the motion, so.
I made the motion and Jim second. Thank you.
Anything else, Kathy?
No, I guess the only other is just a comment or an invitation, actually. I'd like to just kind of put this out there. I'd like to, whomever is at home watching, take the opportunity to invite them to come in and find out more about the organization. Anyone who has a tiny little spark of interest, come in and talk to us, even if you're not interested in specifically making videos. There's lots of ways that you can contribute to your community and contribute through digital media to make an impact. And also, I want to invite the board and other town department heads to come to us, come with projects, collaborate with us, that really, I feel like what truly makes this successful is when an agency like ours is in partnership, and in active partnership with its government, with its citizenship, with its school department, and that through partnership we can really actualize success and create really interesting new models for how this can work for communities. And that's it.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the new challenges this is going to present.
I think it's going to be great for everybody that can't attend.
You know, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that we're going to probably need to send a memo to all the boards and committees advising them that they're going to be expected to use the rooms that are going to have the cameras and to record their meetings. I don't think it would be too far flung to just make a motion to do this tonight and have that sent out to them at Bob's leisure so that they're ready for the new year.
Yikes.
When do you think that's going to start?
I think that's
Well,
it.
Kathy could answer that better than me, but my suspicion are we're
There you
looking at
go.
probably March. We'll at least get conversation.
We should at least send a memo out to let them know it's coming down the pipeline.
I second that. Motion, right, Shannon?
Motion is send a memo to all boards and committees advising that this is going to be developed and that we're going to expect them to be utilizing the meeting rooms with cameras.
So moved.
Anticipated start date, March sometime.
Yeah, it'll be announced when
Oh,
it's
yeah.
ready.
Yeah.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can you, can you restate your motion again? Like, I got the vote, but, like, who made the motion?
Shannon made the motion,
Shannon made the
Jim
motion.
seconded it.
Charlie redefined it.
Come on, Charlie, shut up.
No, you're doing great, Charlie.
The motion is to advise all boards and committees that we're going to be establishing meeting rooms that will have recording devices so that we can broadcast their meetings.
And
It's not
that,
what I said at the beginning, but
It's close.
and that they're all required to use these meeting
they're
rooms.
all going to be required to use those meeting rooms.
Now, do they have to, like, contact, we have to give them a contact number because they're going to have to line up an operator for their equipment?
No.
No.
This is the beauty of it. You come into a meeting, and the chair will say, you're gonna have a button. You put the button on, there's gonna be a light on the camera, and it's gonna, a little screen's gonna say recording. That's all they do. And then when they're done,
Super.
they
Right?
take their hand off the button.
It'd be like an easy button.
Instead of a gavel, you have a button.
Does Shannon get a button?
Not a chance.
You should get the mute button.
Oh, zip it. Moving on.
Moving on. But it should be relatively easy once it's set up. I'm sure she's going to give a quick overview to everybody on how to do it, but it's relatively simple.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
seen
you
it
come
before.
into this room, I'm not here recording, I hit a button, light comes on, says it's recording, we have our meetings, we're done, hit the button again, light goes out, we leave.
I imagine there's microphones and all that involved, so once it's up and going, if you come back and give a little overview of the systems. I think
Sure,
that'd be
we'll do a video, we'll do a visual manual, but
Okay.
also, if anyone's interested too, if you want to wander down the road to 50 Payson Avenue, we installed these systems in all of the conference rooms, and when people have their public meetings, they self-record. So it's the responsibility of the chair, but also, increasing that transparency to that level, you really encourage more participation from the citizenship, and you quell rumors, and you can reference things, and it's really been positive down there. It's all self-contained, and it's all driven by the committee.
It's all archived.
We collect the media cards.
Okay, so it doesn't go out broadcasting live, it just records the meeting?
It doesn't have to broadcast live, but what it does is it forces people to be accountable for their words, not in a vindictive way. But also, you might also just want to remind your boards and committees that under current open meeting law, anybody can walk in and do that anyway. You'll just get a better picture and quality of sound, so there can't be any questions in the future about what actually happened at a
That'd be
meeting.
It's going to cause some logistical problems for different boards that meet in their offices, that are going to have to start using the meeting rooms. But that's just a learning curve on their side.
Mr. Chairman, I know it works very well for the regulatory boards, conservation, planning, ZBA, where sometimes some residents in a particular neighborhood think that the folks downtown aren't looking after their interests, they can watch the proceedings on TV and see for themselves what's being done. It really enhances credibility for some of those boards.
Now, once it's recorded, how long before it goes up on the website?
We usually have about a 24-hour turnaround
Oh, so that quick.
from most stuff. I mean, I think that Mr. Paul behind us, when this meeting concludes, he'll go home and he'll start converting it, and it'll be posted to the Southampton website tomorrow.
Great.
So, barring any weather, other calamity, holidays, Veterans Days, all that sort of thing, when things are shut down, I mean, it's about a one business day turnaround.
So when it's recorded, say upstairs in the small room, how does Paul, in this case, access it to put it up on the website? Is it remotely, or does somebody have to?
There's a couple of options, but I think what we would do is we have a media card. So we go around and replace the media cards.
So you physically have to come in and pull out the
We
card?
physically would come in and manage the data in that
can't
way.
The second floor meeting room is going to be capable of live televising.
Okay.
Right, so you could theoretically do it. You could also, if you had, there's a number of ways, there's more than one way to skin a cat, which is my favorite Yankee expression. But the most efficient way is to have self-record studios where the chairs of the meeting control it. If it needs to go out live, I would encourage people to come down here, or there is going to be a capability to do it from upstairs. It will just be not as pretty.
I guess I'm looking at the wrong side of it. So if I was at a meeting and upstairs and I said something, and once I left the meeting, everybody left, I could run back in, grab the card, and the recording's gone?
Theoretically, you could do that, but you're going to do that in front of witnesses, and then you're going to be guilty of
Well, not
theft.
if everybody's gone. I'm just
Well, I
being
mean, but then
negative.
you would have to have access to the machinery, and so, yeah.
I was just wondering if it would go automatically over wireless or something,
There's some equipment that can do that. I haven't tested out its functionality, so I wouldn't stand before the board and guarantee it
Okay.
until I had that knowledge. I mean, those are possibilities. There's also other
If we run into a
possibilities.
situation where people are stealing town equipment,
It only have to happen once, that's what I'm saying.
well, then there'll be a police investigation and so on and so forth.
Right,
you
and
know.
so I'll also offer this, Mayor Narkowitz in Northampton actually issued administrative code for all boards and committees to self-record. Nobody's ever reported a missing meeting. There's been some technical malfunctions, like the double record, where someone thought they were recording and actually pressed stop instead of record. Everybody's done that. But we have had 0 instances in East Hampton since 2012, where we implemented this system there, of anyone touching those cards.
I saw that system, I was at 50 Payson.
Yeah.
And it was like a camera's up there, you can actually see what's being
Yep.
recorded.
You can see exactly what's going on. You can see when it's recording and when it's not recording, which means that you can still come in and have your personnel board meeting. You're not violating confidentiality. You can still have your executive sessions. You just stop the recording. So it doesn't impede the function of committees on any level.
So there's a monitor up there, so you can see what,
In East Hampton, we did put up a monitor. And we actually did,
Small, but you can see it.
yeah, it's trial and error. It's about a 20-inch television, or maybe, a little about a 20-inch television, and it just is exactly what is on the screen of the camcorder,
Right.
but larger, so you can see clearly if it's green, it's not going, if it's red, it's going.
okay,
So, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
yeah.
It's really going to open up town government to the population.
Yeah, that's what we want to do.
Because if you look right here, look at the audience.
Yes, thank you for coming.
I'm sure we have a pretty big audience.
Oh, I know we have a TV audience, there's no question.
Well, the flip side is it means you don't have anything wildly controversial at the moment, so.
No, I think it'd be
that's
great
good.
for everybody involved.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. We got the payroll done, ECAD done. I guess we'll do C, request by Selectman Cutler to review town council contract. Janet, you have the floor.
I just was asking you about that, because we had said that we were going to discuss reviews of that, and if we were going to put out to possibly change who we have for town council. And you said there was a procedure to that, and I had missed it when you guys had voted to review it. So I wanted us to revisit that.
We actually didn't, in my memory, visit it at all. We discussed talking about it, but.
Possibility about getting quotes or a bid out.
Yeah, but we never win anywhere.
So what are we doing with that? Because that's what my question is.
I don't know, what are we doing with it?
How long does the contract run right now? That would be my first question.
I don't believe we have a
I
contract.
don't think we do.
So it's on
I haven't
call.
seen it. I went through all the files
I don't believe
last couple of
I think
days.
With the K&P, we basically pay as we go.
Okay. My quick thought would be that since Bob is interim town administrator, and he has a lot more to do than this, I would suggest we put it down the road a little bit, but don't forget about it. You know? It's just
Only
another.
asking because I've asked several times,
No,
so.
I think it makes sense, but priority-wise, I don't know if that would be high up there right now.
I have been working with town council since I ended up being chair. I haven't found anything that made me feel uncomfortable with town council.
I think it was just cost, wasn't it, Shannon, that wanted to check? Yeah.
And then we had discussed about bringing it closer to home,
Yep.
saying that they're out in
Yeah.
Boston.
Part of the,
I'm not necessarily saying anybody in town, but a little closer this way.
part of what I've seen doing these types of things for years is K&P is a nice general office, given the broad scope of issues we deal with, because they have expertise on hand with all that. When you get into a specific issue or project that you're dealing with, I've always encouraged this Board of Selectmen, when I used to be on the other side of the fence, to hire a attorney just to deal with that one particular issue. It's become cost-effective to do it that way. So, right now, I have nothing that I see on the table that requires any special attorney use for anything. So, I don't see a need for change at this point. I'm not saying that 6 months from now, I'm not gonna change my mind, but I don't see it right now. I'm trying to be very cost-conscious when we talk to town attorneys. I've had a couple of boards that needed to talk to town attorney that had to go through me before I would authorize them to do it, but there were legitimate reasons as to why they had to. So, I hear you, but I don't think at this time there's a need to.
I think it's a case by case. If we run into something and it can be handled locally, I have no problem in doing that. But,
mean, If you want an example of what we did when we were doing all the deeds here for this town hall,
right.
and I was working on that project of cleaning up all the deeds, I asked the selectmen for authorization to hire a local attorney, because they could do the research, they could get to the registry of
Correct.
deeds easily, and that's the way we did it, and we saved money doing that. But if I'm gonna, right now, I'm working with a number of different attorneys, I'm putting together a seminar on the new marijuana laws. It would be an outfit as large as K&P to be discussing that, because it impacts, your planning, your zoning, your public health stuff, so on and so forth, and all those different layers of laws. I wouldn't be looking at a private attorney to try to do that, because they would be self-educating themselves trying to learn those statutes and how they work. That's me, I'm just one member here.
Well, I had thought about this quite a few years ago when I first got on the board, and I was just curious as to what another firm of that size, of that stature, what they charge. And I'm not saying let's switch, I haven't had any problems with this town council, but, just to look into it to see what they charge, that's what I'm saying. But I think also using a local attorney for smaller things is a much more cost-effective way
Yeah,
of
you
going.
save- you save
Absolutely.
money that way.
I like that. But, I mean, how long would it take to get on the phone, really, and
Mm-hmm.
just ask the same, type of attorney, what their fees are? That's
And it's
all.
not to say that we can't find an attorney's office that is as schooled as Copeland and Page.
Right.
That's closer.
No.
I understand that we've been with them since the 80s, and no one's ever left or even questioned it or whatever, but I'm not going to say that they're the only ones that can handle the broad spectrum of cases that we have. I'm sure we can find somebody else who's just as comparable
If you get into
here.
the larger cities, they have counsel on board.
Mm-hmm.
They don't use those types of agencies because they have staff.
Mm-hmm.
And that staff is versed in most of the city issues. We're not large enough to ever afford that. So are you asking, and I'm just shooting this, are you asking that we just do a sort of impromptu, not looking for a request for proposals, just simply phone calls to see what other companies would charge?
Yeah, just a general idea. I mean, I think it's.
And what their capabilities are, to see if we can find someone that's comparable to what we have and what our needs are, closer to home.
Yeah, I'm going to guess, and just guess that you can't call a fairly reasonable sized firm and say, can you give us your pricing? They're going to want something, the type of work that we want them to do and all that. I mean, I wouldn't give away my fees like that. That's why I think it's going to take a little more work, and maybe do a little proposal and send it out.
And they also operate differently in some cases.
Yeah.
Some will take a retainer, modest retainer, and then you're billed for their time. Others will give you a price for so much time each month. So, I mean, it gets a little complicated there. I just looked today at a list of law firms that are serving local communities. There's maybe 3 or 4 in Boston. There's one, I mean, they specialize in municipal work. There's one firm in Worcester. The only one that I found that does general legal counsel in the western part of the state is Bacon Wilson in Springfield. As Charlie said, when you have a specialized problem, and then you can hire a specialized lawyer out of Northampton or wherever, and there's plenty of local lawyers who can help you with specialized problems. Otherwise, for general legal counsel, there's a limited number of firms, and I guess whenever you decide to do it, if I'm here, we can put together some standards and see what they would do.
Makes sense. I mean,
If you're a member of the board, you can make a motion.
yeah.
I mean,
Now, Bob, is it normal, we don't have a contract with them, and do most communities have contracts with legal firms? Or is it just when they need them, they call them?
Normally, there are contracts.
There are contracts.
Yeah, open-ended contracts, but nevertheless, the contract specifies the terms, what the retainer is, what's covered by the retainer. For example, litigation is not covered by your monthly retainer, if that's the way they're doing it. So you would have a retainer cost, and then you'd have the extras, depending upon what kind of specialized work that you wanted. For example, if you wanted a lawyer to do your cable contract, probably couldn't do it as well as Charlie, but nevertheless, you could hire a lawyer to do that, but that would be a lawyer who does that kind of work, probably not even associated with a firm, but they just specialize in that kind of work. General legal counsel is what we're talking about here, and one of the ways that I guess cuts down on direct competition is each firm has their own terms for providing service, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to compare.
So why don't we have a contract?
before my time, you were here before me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, would that?
Do you save any
less-
money? if
I
you
know,
have a
but I'm just
contract?
thinking, I'm thinking like,
Retainer
would it be less expensive if we had a contract with them?
Would the board like Bob to contact KMP and ask them what their rates are and if they're willing to submit a contract to the town?
Would it be
Just to
beneficial?
see-
Yeah,
Will we see anything out of that? You want to find out, just to find out?
yeah.
And that'll give us a trigger point as to where we should be going?
Mm-hmm.
Shannon, what do you think?
I think we can do that, but I still think we should explore other avenues.
Well, I have no problem with doing that simultaneously, I'm just asking.
But we should at least start with that to know where we stand.
Well, on the planning board, we used to go out and get legal advice on certain issues to complement Page, and now we tend to go local, and it saves a lot of money, and it's somebody that knows the area, and it works well. we're doing
So,
that.
do I hear a motion to instruct the TA to contact Complement and Page and try to see what a contract proposal would be for us?
So moved.
No, you have to make the motion.
Yes, I move that we get a contract or information about a contract, potential contract with Copeland and Page.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, my question would be to see if entering into a contract would save us any money.
Well, that would be.
Get the details of
If,
it.
yeah, if we don't save any money, then you're
Then
better
it's not
off
worth
just being the way we are, because then you're not bound to that. Maybe if you enter a contract with them, maybe you're not gonna have the freedom to go to a local attorney, I'm not sure.
And if you have to have a retainer, that's a monthly payment that you have to pay, whereas if you use them when you need them,
Right.
you know, so are we going to tie ourselves into something that's going to cost us more and get less? So that's be my question.
Yeah, we'll find out, I
But if
guess.
we,
I have no problem with asking them to come up with something. Based on all the service they've given us over the last years, they should be able to come up with something saying this would have been better or that would have been better.
I'll check around. Obviously, you're paying Boston rates. You're paying
And for
fees
travel,
based,
too.
based on Eastern Massachusetts standards for lawyers. If we could find a local firm that did general counsel, you might get something better.
Well, by starting off with this one,
we have a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
So the next question is, do you want to make a motion to instruct Bob to see if he can find some local firms in the area and what their contract proposal would be?
And if they had an interest in representing the town, I'd make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a crisis here.
My mouse is frozen, it's locked, so I can't type anything.
Well, that just stinks now, doesn't
Flip the
it?
paper over and take a pen.
Right? Go old school.
No, because I don't want to.
Is it saved?
Nice and quick.
So I have your motion, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do I hear a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Jen, what do you want us to do?
I'll just keep my paper
Okay.
unless somebody knows how to unlock the laptop
Trying to
mouse.
figure it.
It's locked?
Locked.
Does it
The
require a
mouse
pass-
is locked.
a password? Is that what you're looking for?
No.
Mouse
No,
is a code
just it doesn't
mouse,
work.
So I can't scroll at all. Like I have
Well,
stuff.
Do a Control Alt Delete and see what's not running.
Yeah.
Problem, it doesn't have a
Hopefully you
map on
saved
it.
everything.
Doesn't have to
You
have.
can't use the mouse.
Oh,
You can't use the mouse to get to the task manager.
oh, sure.
You should be able to use the arrows. Control,
maybe
and then you
arrows,
arrow it
yeah.
down.
Is
Yeah, there we
a
are.
port on
Then
the
you hit
side?
enter.
Can you plug in a mouse? And does anybody have one? by any
It
chance?
just is running Word.
Do you want to take a
this?
5-minute break?
I don't.
Task- You got Task Manager here.
Okay,
Yeah.
5-minute
It's
break.
just running
Paul.
Word, so.
Bring the meeting back to order. Next item is announcement that Eversource will be cutting vegetation in town. Bob?
They are going to be doing trimming around their wires. In the case of tall trees, they'll be cutting 15 feet around to have clearance for the wires. And also, they're going to be doing some brush cutting and removal of low vegetation near their poles and wires. They do this routinely all over the country, and I don't know if there's any controversy about it. They have to do it, they have the right to do it. They just wrote this message to inform us that they're going to be doing it.
That was nice.
Yes.
That's general housekeeping for
That's right.
them. There's nothing unusual with that. Okay, policy regarding part-time employees, I'm moving that into January, so we have a little more time to work on that. Town clerk, Westfield Animal Control, we're passing over that, we don't have any new information on that. And contract review for Zipta Farm, that needs to be posted for December 20th for the conservation. They're supposed to email me next week what they've decided on, so I have a little time to review it, and then I'll send my emails to everybody, so you guys will have time to look at it before the meeting. Personnel changes, PCFs. We have custodian laborer, Kevin Slattery. That,
Bless you.
Excuse me. Sorry.
no, that's all right. I was just thinking, usually the third sneeze indicated bubonic.
I was waiting for it too.
It's all right. Anyways, department head signed off on it, personnel board signed off, finance has signed off on it. This is basically Paul Melnick leaving. I believe we've already done this.
I thought we did a while
We already
ago.
voted
I
on it.
think you did, yes.
All right, so that's a moot point, that's done. I'm going to sign it so it doesn't appear back at me. Oh, I know what it is, that didn't get through finance even though we discussed it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Okay, second one is new hire. Some guy by the name of Robert Markel. I think he wants to be the acting town administrator.
Some guy.
Poor guy.
Didn't know any better. Been approved by the town accountant, was approved by the personnel board, it was approved by the finance committee, and it was recommended by the board of selectmen. All in favor of hiring Bob?
Aye.
Aye.
And that is it. We are waiting on nothing. Licensing permits, the same one for the Sattler Auto Dealership. We're still waiting for a check
No
on
check.
it. Huh?
No check.
Yep, I got it, no check. Payrolls, did we not do these payrolls last time?
Apparently not, because those were given to us today.
No, I'm talking about these, I remember reading all this last select.
Oh, those. I think you did, yes.
I did read all
You
those,
did.
those have all been approved.
Yes,
All right.
okay.
Calendar announcements, next Board of Selectmen's meeting is December 20th. We're aiming for special town meeting for January 24th. I don't have any minutes for approval. They're all in the Dropbox. Do you wish to pass over those, seeing it appears most of you haven't read them?
I read them, but
I read 'em.
that's fine.
You read them,
We
you
can
read
wait.
them?
I mean, if you want to wait till
No,
everybody gets
if
them.
everyone's comfortable, I'd assume basically approving the regular minutes for November 15th, November 1st, November 15th, and November 21st.
I was told that the minutes go in Dropbox. Do you want
Yeah.
to continue that, or do you?
Oh, yeah.
That's not a problem.
We used to have a minute folder that she used to print them, and then we could look at them here.
Yeah, in case you, because
And then we'd
we
sign 'em.
still have to sign them.
Okay.
So do we want to make a motion to approve November 1st, 15th, and 21st as regular meetings?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right, executive sessions will hold off as they need to be reviewed still, I believe. Am I correct, Bob?
I didn't hear.
The executive session minutes, we're going to need to hold off on them because we need to review them in executive session to
Correct.
approve them.
Correct.
So with that, we're moving into executive session. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21, items 1, 3, 4, and 6, reputation, characters, physical condition, mental, relative to a professional competency of an individual for discussion, fire chief's contract for strategy, fire chief contract negotiation, security issues, and Greenway Committee. I need a roll call vote to move into
Also 7.
Yeah.
Number 7.
number
I
7.
don't see 7, but did you say number 2? I don't
It's
think you
under
said. I don't think you said all these numbers. These are 1, 2, 3, 4.
I said 1, 3, 4, and 6. Where's 7?
I don't have 7. I have number 2, though.
7.
I have 1, 3, 4, and
It
6.
is 7.
Okay.
This was the,
Oh.
this was the 7 that was suggested by council. Maybe you didn't receive the update. I read it.
But it's not on the agenda.
7 is-
Oh, 7 is, I see it.
Remember you would ask me to
In fact, I'm the one that put it on there.
check, yes.
Yes. So also 7 for open meeting law
Have it on
violation.
the agenda, the posted agenda?
Well, my agenda's old compared to the new one.
But that's the posted agenda?
That's the posted one.
With 7 on it?
The new
Oh,
one's the posted, yes, with
Okay.
7. I know because I'm the one that posted it,
Okay, that's fine.
okay?
Yeah.
So 7 also, I'm sorry. Roll call vote?
Cutler, aye.
Here's I.
Kaneki, aye?
Martin, aye?